You're listening to the Platform Engineering Podcast, your expert guide to the fascinating world of platform engineering. Each episode brings you in-depth interviews with industry experts and professionals who break down the intricacies of platform architecture, cloud operations, and DevOps practices. From tool reviews to valuable lessons from real-world projects to insights about the best approaches and strategies, you can count on this show to provide you with expert knowledge that will truly elevate your own journey in the world of platform engineering.
Welcome back to the Platform Engineering Podcast. I'm Corey O'Daniel. Today I have a special guest, Peter O'Connor, the Director of Platform Engineering at Stack Overflow. Now, if you've ever Googled a programming question, you've undoubtedly ended up on Stack Overflow. It's the go-to resources for developers worldwide. If it's not working, it's probably the first place you're going, right? But what you might not know is behind the scenes, Stack Overflow is undergoing a monumental shift from running their own hardware to the cloud. And it's a journey that's pretty fascinating as it is complex, and Peter's right at the heart of it. We're going to dive into his career, the challenges of moving a beloved developer platform to the cloud, and what the future holds for Stack Overflow. Peter, welcome to the show.
Hi, Corey. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So before we dive in, I want to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart. This is off the path of platform engineering. Okay. The burden of an apostrophe in the last name, and I'm sure you know the pain. Can you give our listeners a peek into the apostrophic challenge to how often do you find yourself at the bottom of a form and you're like, I'm about to hit submit, and you do, and you find yourself scrolling all the way back up to the top to fix your last name?
It happens at least weekly. It is, in 2024, we have not solved special characters in names. And I don't understand what happened that we got here. And going to the bottom of the page, you're right. That's like the worst thing. The other worst thing is like when you go to do credit card entering and you're like, okay, my credit card says there's an apostrophe in it. I go to type it into the payment portal and the payment portal's like, you can't have apostrophes. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. You're not going to take it.
Credit card does?
Yeah.
Oh, I think one of the funniest things happened the other day. I ordered something, not through Amazon. I don't know where it came from. But when I got it, my name was ampersand, like pound symbol. It was pretty much the HTML code for an apostrophe. And I was like, now that,
yep.
I love that somebody HTML escaped it before they shipped it. That was a fantastic one for me.
Yeah, I will tell you, I'm very, sometimes I have to hold back to think like, apostrophe, like pipe, drop table. And then I have to resist it every time.
You can see where it's happening though, right? Like, cause you will hit submit on forms every once in a while and you'll get a 500 error. And I'm like, I know something is amiss here. There's something I could fiddle around with, but I got to get back to work. So I'm not going to, but maybe I'll drop them an email. Yeah. I'll hit their bug bounty page up.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. We should actually, maybe at the end of the call, we'll Google that problem, see if we can find the answer on Stack Overflow.
Ooh, nice.
So you got an interesting background. You before getting into development, you were a chemistry teacher, a computer science teacher. Now you're leading engineering teams. How did you go through that transition from education to software, and how has that experience in education influenced your leadership and approach to engineering?
Yeah, dramatically. Like the similarities and information I've gotten from teaching just really taught me so much about how to be both a good leader and like a good platform engineer. So like I went out of college thinking like, chemistry is the way it is. Don't go into computer science. You don't want to do the thing you love. You might just hate doing it as a job. So I was like, sweet, do chemistry. And then I was like, teaching, I've always been pretty good at teaching. So I was like, sweet, let's give this a shot. So I taught high school for a while and college. And it was amazing. Like, inviting people into a world and a domain that you love is like really exciting and brings a joy to my world that I really I kind of thirst for, and that's why when you talk about how does this make a good manager or platform engineer, it's either customers or the people that I'm trying to empower as my team to say like, listen, I want to help you out. I'm here to set you up for success and get you to be very, very successful here. And, what can I do to bring you into that, pit of success? And teaching, it's a lot about that. So the skills that I get about making sure the customer we're building the right thing for the customer comes from teaching, where you're like, okay, if someone doesn't want to learn a subject, like, why? Why? What do you not like? What is not interesting you here? And you can and every person's a little different, so you have to really like figure it out and understand it. And you have like your main path, like the class itself, and you're like, okay, well, that's generally these are the reasons that people don't like chemistry. It's just kind of boring, dry. I can solve that. And then you have the edge cases, right? You're like, well, there's some students who just don't want to learn even after that, and I really blew something up for them, and they still don't want to learn chemistry. Like, what? And then you're driving for the next what's wrong, why, and that translates into then like the platform engineering. Whether it be a DevX team, a tooling team, whatever you're calling your platform team or what your team's trying to do, is it's serving your product engineers. Some of them have some pretty easy ones. Hey, I want to be really nice if I had a great GitHub action, flow, or I wish I could just get an easy way into Kubernetes. Cool. I mean, that makes sense. But then there are other people who have lots of other issues that are like not in the mainstream. And so you have to then search them out, find them where they are, and then like bring that back and then say, okay, what are we going to do to like bring them into it? So it's a lot of the same skill sets about teaching that go into both the managing and what this podcast is about, platform engineering. It's a lot of that. So
Yeah, and it sounds like in both roles, you occasionally just blow some stuff up.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
a little production, a little some gases over here, just blow it up. It's very funny you said that, because as you said that, I actually had a flashback, and I remembered the guy's name, Mr. Botts, if he's still out there. He was my high school chemistry teacher, and he definitely blew stuff up in class all the time, which I don't know. Is that a high school chemistry teacher thing? Is that is that the move?
Yes, it is. If you really want to get people on the thing, my first day is a demo where I got taught by this seasoned veteran, Sam Lucas, if you're still around, but I doubt he'd be listening to this, you take a Pringles can. I think they're still in cans. I haven't bought one in a while. And you put a hole on one side and on the other side, and then you obviously eat the chips. And then you just fill it up with hydrogen, put it on a little stand, and you light the top, and the hydrogen makes this little candle. And it's the best demo ever. The candle, like, it starts going lower and lower and lower and lower because the flame's getting lower and oxygen's coming in. Hey, this isn't the chemistry, like, science lesson here, but what's really fun about it is it gets inside. The fire's inside the can for like a good 3-4 seconds. And then it finally reaches critical mass of oxygen, the hydrogen, and just explodes and shoots up like a rocket. So you just convince the students, you're like, oh man, I messed this up. Oh God, I really screwed it up. And you just walk away from it. Oh man, I've gotten so many students. I swear students have jumped out of their seats across the room.
That's funny. We did he did a what is it what is it? Is it mulligan? Is that what it's called? The big water bottles.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Those big ones you put on top of the thing. He did one of those, and it shot across the room and broke some stuff. And I think he actually did mess that one up. I think it went a little further than he meant to.
Yeah.
Well, so it's interesting here, though. You guys are moving. You guys are moving from, you've been running on-prem since Stack Overflow started, right?
Yeah.
Moving to the cloud. So you actually have a migration going on, this transition culturally within the org to platform engineering at the same time. And then you also kind of have some upskilling you have to do at the same time, because you have to teach, get your team educated on how to manage stuff in the cloud.
Yeah.
So I would love to get into that a bit, but I think all that at the same time is very interesting. I'd love to hear how you're juggling it. But what was the goal in Stack Overflow moving to the cloud? Because I feel like there's so many blog posts about the monolith of Stack Overflow, how they run on-prem. I feel like on Hacker News, it's always you don't need microservices. Stack Overflow has been a monolith for 20 years. Just do it that way. What was the final thing that pushed Stack Overflow towards starting to adopt some of these other processes and architectures?
Yeah, that's actually a lot of that. We could dig into this question a lot, because there's been stops, starts, and continues along the way. In Hacker News, it's always fun. It's seeing how people model our architecture in Hacker News or on LinkedIn, and I'm like, I don't know. I saw something earlier today. It was we're cashless. Well, you don't use Redis. I'm like, we leverage Redis actually pretty heavy here. But anyway, it's there are a ton of blog posts, and it's something we're really proud of, and I'm proud of. And I wouldn't be here today if the people who started this company didn't start with the monolith. And I think that was an amazing decision. I think what they've done to it to optimize it is fantastic. And it's a really, really like slim and cool and highly optimized monolith. That's huge. And to the fact that they were to do this like on 9 web servers, right? Like is like insane to me. Like I think it is just a testament to what you can do if you like buckle down and do things and just try to like heavily like opinionate and optimize. And so that's awesome. The thing is though, like when we're thinking about going to the cloud, like, well, why would we want to go to the cloud? Well, we already did that with our SaaS product, our Stack Overflow Teams product. It got lifted into Azure. There's some blog posts on that as well, and that was not easy. That was mainly for a compliance reason, like it was a good way to add value to the business. But for the public platform, like it's a harder sell. Well, the decision, mostly came down to the idea that, well, we have a data center in New York, and that data center is closing, right? So we could do a few options, right? We could find a new data center. We could probably just lease equipment from somebody and say, hey, just you take care of the equipment part. We don't want to be in that business anymore and run it. And when we took a look at those options and then compared it to like a cloud migration, it definitely made more sense just to go to cloud, right? It made sense from like a money point of view for us. Like if we could just go to the cloud, if we look at the estimates, it's gonna help us kind of lower those costs and what we're maintaining 2 data centers right now, because we run like an active passive kind of mindset here. If Stack Overflow goes down, there's usually a read-only mode that you go into, and you're in a different data center then. And
Oh, interesting.
yeah, it's pretty cool. Like it's actually really cool. But then we said, well, if we could just do that in the cloud, right now with GCP, that would be the best thing for us to do, and we get some upskills. Like I wouldn't say this is like a business per se. Well, I would say maybe it is a business decision, but upskilling your engineers and making sure that they like feel like they're doing something technologically relevant is also good. And so like if we're saying, hey, we're going to help you be cloud skill ready, that's a win too, right? Because we really believe in our people, and if we're not really doing the best thing to help them in their future, because they're not always going to be with us likely, right? At some point they will likely move on. Let's make sure that they're ready for the next gig too. So it's not like a single answer. I mean, if it was, it's definitely the money. It's economical for us to go it this way. But it's the people too.
Yeah, and are you feeling like in that migration, is it a lot of, we've got stuff on hardware, we're moving it like almost like lift and shifting it to the cloud, or are you actually doing some like replatforming of the tooling you have there and services?
Yeah, if I would characterize it today, it's a 95% lift, then shift strategy. The big thing we want to try to do, though, is we want to try our best to sensibly default to a service pattern for new things, so we're not adding more into the monolith, right? Because the more we put into that, the harder it becomes to lift. We think about cloud running on this, right? Like the costs of running that can just balloon if we don't do it in a cloud native way with services. So for us, it was like, we need to get out of the data center. We don't really have time to sit there and like, extract every service that we want to. So the best thing is we'll lift and shift it out and get it there. We do actually have there are like one of the key things is like there are supporting service architecture already. Like the way we serve tags is through actually a service. Is it a microservice? I don't know. I don't know what you call a microservice. Is it lines of code? Is it how large? I don't know. The domain is, I don't know. So, but there are many other services that support it. It's not a ton, but they exist. So it's not like there's only the monolith. There are other things behind it.
Yeah, I'm not sure where the line is between a microservice and a service, but I just tend to make all my services right-sized. I just nail them the first time.
That's nice. There's a book there
Not
somewhere if you make them right size just the first time.
There's actually a fantastic blog post called "It's Microservices," like it's a split join criteria for microservices, and then it's got a really funny it's like a nihilist approach to art. I'll have to find it. It's a great article on like how to size services when you're splitting up and like when to decide to split and join things. It's like I'll look up the name and put it in the show notes at the end. But yeah, I feel like getting that size right is always a challenge, right? And it's bigger than a single MySQL table.
yeah, much bigger.
Yeah, much bigger than that.
Yeah,
very cool. So like, okay, so you got all these things kind of going on at the same time. Was a part of this shift towards the cloud also to start adopting like platform engineering, like tooling and practices at the same time, or did that predate the cloud decision?
That was probably around the same time when we wanted to do that. At that point, the company was, Stack Overflow was trying to say, okay, let's actually do this in a cloud way. Let's just create a platform engineering team to do it, and to help us along the way, and that will make us cloud ready. I was part of the original hiring process. I was part of let's create this platform group. I was hired on as an IC on a core, what we call core engineering, and we were trying to do some of that stuff. Like we wanted to create this a service baseline. What does a service baseline look like? We also were trying to create our own identity platform, right, to replace the provider of identity that we have for Stack Overflow right now. And we tried those things, and it was sort of like, this will work, right? Make a platform engineering team, call it platform engineering, and platform engineering happens. And that was definitely one of our, in my opinion, would be one of our false starts. It didn't work very well. We ran into roadblocks a lot, and there was just uncomfortableness about what to do and how to go about it. And the culture, the people culture at Stack Overflow was great, but the culture for let's do services just didn't exist yet. So it was definitely something it was a struggle.
Yeah, with that cultural, with the cultural hurdles there, what, did you already have buy-in? You'd buy in from the org. It was just figuring out how to do it was the problem, or was it getting the org itself, the org and its, the amorphous blob of the org, getting them on the same page? Was that the problem, or was it just the actual okay, now they're in, how do we do this?
Yeah, I think it was more the amorphous blob of the org is a good one. The leadership had definitely said we should do this, right? Let's create services. This is how it's going to work, right? And they were into it. And so it was a top-down style, kind of let's do this. And that just, the ICs and the other teams were not really invested in that, right? They've been working in the monolith. They know the monolith. They know how it works. I can put my feature in the monolith. Product wants me to make this new thing that's going to be good for Stack Overflow for Teams or for the public platform. And it's going to help our community out. And that's great. And they didn't see the value, right? So, it's like having a lemonade stand, in the middle of, an orchard of lemons, right? No one needs it because we already have all these lemons around here. And the thing is to get the buy-in. So to get the buy-in, the things we were trying, I was talking about, just didn't work. And that really kind of, occurred for a while. And my team, had some frustrations around it. We wanted to help people be, a cloud native and lift things into the cloud. And it just was a big, effort that didn't result very far. So I would say that's probably one of the biggest reasons it did struggle, right? I don't think they were wrong for trying that idea. That works probably in some places. It just didn't work here.
Yeah, I feel like if it works in places, I feel like it's it's a subset of them.
Yeah,
'cause I feel like that's a common story of okay, we're doing this, right? And we my company sponsored reInvent last year, and the number of people that we met that were platform engineers, that was their title, but they were we're just kind of ops rebranded, right? And it's just there was a wild amount of skepticism about just the idea and the role it felt like at reInvent, because so many people were kind of in this place where they're we got the raise, we got the new title, it looks great on LinkedIn, but I'm doing the same work, right? And that's a bummer for most of them, right? Because they thought that their job was going to change, and they might be building something, they're producing something, but the team's not using it, right? And like that is like that culturally is like that's the thing that like it just feels like a stone in the gut, right? Like
Exactly. Yeah, the team, when I was like deep in on that team, it was just like we're trying. I remember we even sent a survey out. Like we said, okay, we just gotta you gotta use some of your soft skills, right? Let's time to soft skill this up and see if we can just get some buy-in. And I remember, that was fresh off of like when we had done this identity service and we said, all right, nobody wants this thing, so let's just kind of put it back for a while. And we did the survey, and we had some people, right, that were interested, like, and we interviewed them, and they were like, "This is, cool. I like this," but they weren't the majority, right? And the majority wasn't, looking at doing that, and it was just another gut punch, right? Like, so then we went back, and as a new team too, one of the things we had is there were still some services. I'm betting almost all platform teams, at least everywhere I've been, you start a platform of some sort, and there's always some amount of like these services that just like nobody wants, and you just kind of get them, right? And you're like, okay, right? And you're like, sure, I'll own that. I don't know what it does, but I'll do it. So then we just switched gears, and I think for a few months we just sat around, and I wouldn't say sat around, like we just sit around, but we definitely like investigated those systems and said, let's just focus on this for a while and we'll come back. And that's what we did.
yeah. How did you get like that first IC that was outside of your group that had that aha moment, or like, okay, like I am the champion outside of this platform engineering team of this platform? Like what was it that finally got that first person or first team invested in what you were doing?
That was definitely a big pivotal moment. I would probably take a step back first though and say that like around about a year and a couple months ago, we had some, last year was pretty rough for a lot of companies, and so we had also gone through, a layoff, and it was hard. But during that time, both before and after, there was a partnership made between reliability engineering at our company and my team. I had become manager at that point, and we kind of got together and said, listen, we need to find a way to make this work. And what we tried before didn't work. So I told you about some of the services that we had. What we did is we said, okay, first we just need to know, like, can we even do this? Like you said, Stack Overflow has been on metal for so long. Like, how do we take a service and put it into the cloud, right? Like most of us know how, but like here, how do we do that? And so we took two services. There's one called Traducier, which is a translation system, a community-driven translation system, and there was our IDP, our identity provider, the old, I wouldn't say old school, I don't want to offend anybody, the legacy one that works great and we still use today. How do we get them into the cloud? So my team, like I said, we partnered with them and said, let's just try this. So we did it, and we got them up there, and we learned a lot from that. And then it comes to what you're asking. We had that learning, like, okay, how do we take this learning and do something with it, right? Like, because we now seen the pattern here at Stack Overflow of how this works, because we needed to know our patterns, not someone else's patterns. We need to know what we need to do. And that's when a team that wanted to deploy a new service, they were some people who were kind of like influential a little bit. They were, a team that had, high output. People, had a lot of regard for what they would do. They kind of were innovators, right? They were what I would say, and when we talk product, they were early adopters. They were seeking the newest solution. And this is in the age of AI had just come out, and their thing was like, okay, let's try something new. We have space. Let's try something new. And that's when I said, all right, you want to try something new? I have a team member, that we'd be happy to lend over to you and embed. And we'll have reliability engineering support us for any infrastructure needs to understand, like, what does that take to do what you're doing? And that was a pivotal moment. Embedding into that team and getting that team, enabled because they wanted to be, just changed everything, right? Like, we learned a lot. We got a service out for them. We brought learning back to us, and everybody was happy. We got the product done. We got engineers on that team interested, and we got learnings. It was just like win-win-win everywhere, and that's when the ball started really rolling.
So enablement was like the magic.
Yeah, for sure. Enablement
is awesome. I've seen so many teams that it's like there was just like this like massive debt hurdle that was like just tormenting people. Like the survey goes out and it's like, oh, our CI/CD builds are slow, and it's like that's the first thing that the platform team does is like optimize some builds, and it's like, okay, we helped you with like your Docker images, but like that self-service, that enablement is still like miles away, where like they get the real taste of like what this team can do. And I feel like that is where a lot of people with this operations DevOps SRE background can really like turn into a 10x. I hate saying that, like turn into a 10x engineer, right? The recruiters say this. It's a silly phrase. They say it all the time, but like this is the opportunity to really do that within a business. If you can make your engineers be able to do things themselves, like that is one of the biggest superpowers you can have as an operations or SRE, and like getting them to that point. So with that group that they'd gotten some enablement, they felt the ability to kind of have a little bit of control over getting this service into the cloud, getting this AI product like deployed. Was that like from there? Were they your word of mouth? Like, did they go out and kind of like spread the gospel of platform engineering to the rest of the team, or was that still like a marketing effort from your team's side to like get people to start coming over and working with you?
Yes, the answer is yes to all of that, folks.
Yes.
So yeah, if starting platforms is hard, and when you get a little bit of like evangelism and people are happy with it, you take everything you can get and you try to do more. So that team was very, very proud of what they did, and they did a lot of talking. If I remember correctly, they even did a demo or two explaining like, hey, this is how it worked, and they even talked to our product managers to say, look how fast this can be done, and look what we can do. I mean, not fast originally, because that's part of the issue at the beginning is you're learning and it takes a little longer, but look how iterations can go faster. And so they started talking a lot themselves. And that gave us like, okay, there, we have the spark. Don't lose it this time. Right. So that then is when like my brain started going like, okay, all right, with the team, all right, folks, how are we going to do this? Right. Like, how are we going to not lose this momentum? And that's when I'd say the biggest thing is, it is going back to the standard kind of product style. Marketing has to go into your big thing. Like, shine a light on the team, shine a light on everything that they're doing well, shine a light on, have my team have a light shine on there. Like, so it's people are proud and excited and like, look, we did this. And that marketing never stop. I mean, people probably get tired of me marketing, when I'm trying to do this. So, we'll do things like office hours, right? Every other week. We have a steering committee that meets to discuss like, hey, what should we be doing? Like, what's the problems right now? Also, side note, any good team that you're going to do marketing with needs a good name and a good logo. So we had one of my team members, out of hand one day said, hey, this is like free refills at a soda machine, right? You want a service, you just go up and just refill and you get a new one. And we're like, at first we're like, ha ha ha, is that the name? And we're like, sure, that's the name. And we have this big cup logo with eyes and stuff. It's great. It's like everybody loves it. We have a Slack emoji. We react to things with the free refills. Oh yeah.
That's how you roll platform engineering out, is just a Slack emoji. Once you have that, like it's on its own from there. Yeah. Like you don't have to do anything anymore.
Yeah. I'm taking vacation.
So were you still? Yeah, we gotta go. I'm gonna drop I'm gonna emoji this 6 times. I gotta bolt. Yeah. Enjoy it, guys. Yeah. So that first team that you embedded with. Yeah. So it starts, you start getting the word of mouth, you start doing the marketing, which I would love to talk a bit more about the marketing, because I think that's something that's very interesting. But was that the end of embedding in teams, or are you still having like loaning out your engineers to embed with people to find those problems, or are people kind of bringing them to you now?
I wish embedding was more during the time period from then and in between. We'd have people like liaison, I'd say would be kind of the max. But like I was talking about earlier, we were really slim on people, right? So, embedding comes with a high cost too, right? Remember I told you these other services we have to handle too. And it's a balance to handle those things and that. But we did a pretty good job of that. So then it became like, it was more like, all right, let's build like what the base product is that we're trying to do. Because now we can't just keep, embedding right off the bat. We need to find a way to self-serve. And that's when it lent to, okay, let's document what we did, let's get a process system set out. And then once we have documentation, highlight the points that were really the pain and automate those. And that's kind of what took the next 6 months or so to create like a CLI, test it out. We'd have a few other teams do some exploring because again, there was some word of mouth going out and we weren't, we were loud about what we were doing, to some degree, saying, hey, come do this. It's really fun. And that is when, that time, was a big innovation time for us. Embedding is still, starting back up again, actually. We found some space to do this. The service I was talking about, we're finding ways to like pragmatically, chunk them down and have them take less of our time. We also are partnering with another team. We have a team called Stacks. They do the Stack Overflow design system that you can actually do stackoverflow.design, and you can download it. It's open source. And they're responsible for the Chrome look and feel, but they also do a lot of UI enablement too. They actually are the ones who enabled us to do Svelte in islands in our monolithic code base. And so they've always been interested, like how one of the problems you're going to run into is definitely UI, right? Like how do you get these UIs in there? So we're partnering with them. And actually, as of like next week, or technically it might have even started, is that by the time this comes out, definitely started. There's a team that wants to do something very unique with a UI, like embed, a hot path UI, and so we are embedding, over there to try that out and see what that looks like and bring that information back as well. So we see the value in it for sure, and it's definitely been the most valuable. But you have to like place it with a smaller team. You have to place it appropriately, so you're not like spending that cash all the time, that money on that way all the time.
Yeah, I really like that idea of embedding. I feel like that's an interesting one. I've definitely seen SRE teams do that well, especially like when you're trying to get in with a service that's been a bit fidgety or goes down often. But being able to get in and work with a team and see like where their struggle is pretty interesting, because the survey side of the world, like that's also, I think first off, it's something that I think many operations folk or SRE will struggle with, right? Because like you are building a product, right? And they're time and time again the furthest team from the product. Like when you're talking about your main product, right? Like you talk about Stack Overflow, you talk about Macy's.com, whatever it is, the ops people are the furthest from product. They're probably not in product meetings. They might not even have a product manager. Now all of a sudden they are a product, right? And just getting those soft skills to survey right is hard, right? Like without introducing your own biases. Like, hey, does the CI system suck? Yes.
Yeah.
The answer is always yes. Even if it's fantastic, it still sucks, right? And so it can be very hard to survey. So that is an interesting strategy of actually like just putting people on the team and like being able to see like, let me see the pains that you're feeling and like what doesn't feel like it should be your service's responsibility, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. We that's what some of the precipitous current embedding is too. Like we're actually running a survey again. It's a lower, I wouldn't say lower effort. It is lower effort than an embedding, tool, but it's one tool, right? One tool in the toolbox. And is it the best tool? Well, it's a tool and it will give you information. But when you're in a code base and you're sitting there saying, okay, I would like to get information about the current Stack Exchange site I'm on, and you find out that the way you do that is through this global immutable state, and then you're just like, oh no, how am I going to replicate that in a service, right? Like, we don't have that, we don't want that, or our sensible default is not to have a global immutable state in a service, and again, it's not critiquing why it's there, it's more just saying, that's going to be a pain. And what do we do there? Or data access. Boy, when you need database access, it's on some object, right? Like just operate on, has some function that allows me to grab it. This is so easy. In a service, that's going to be a little harder, right? And how do I even get the data? Because you don't want to create, monolith by database, right? Like I create a service, but we connect to the same database. Well, okay, we're struggling again. So let's not do that. Yeah, you find out so much being the closest to the problem. And that, I've said that more recently about things than anything. Like, go where the problems are, go where the people are to find out how to solve them is like a mantra that works in so many different ways. And here it definitely does.
Yeah, I mean, I like a good survey. Don't get me wrong, but I feel like if you don't know how to survey and you don't know how to process the results, it might not be, you might have a lot of help on the Stack Overflow side of the world, given being that you guys have the Stack Overflow survey. But like, if you're a small team and you're trying to figure this out, like sometimes the information you get back from the survey isn't really what people want, right? It's just like, it's like the bias in your questions. They told you what sucks about the things you asked about, but then you just missed like a whole part of their world that like you don't know. And like that is, I really like that approach. So let's talk about the marketing a bit, because I feel like this is another thing that operations SREs are pretty far from, right? I feel like, I don't know. I feel like I got a few friends in the space that aren't necessarily like the most boisterous or talkative people. They're not going out there gloating about like what they're doing and why you should be using it. They're there to do the hard work, and they're dependable, right? So it's funny. It's like this other role that's like you have to learn how to do to have a good platform team, to get your team excited. But it's also one of those skill sets that's just so far from the average operations person. So how did your team go about the marketing internally originally, and what were some of the challenges and like upskilling yourselves there to do it effectively?
Yeah, that's actually like a fantastic question, because I was thinking about it that at the end we were just talking about is I will admit that I am one of the luckiest people on the planet when it comes to teams right now. And I'm not trying to like, wow, let me tell you all these people, and is anyone looking for anybody? Please, no, I love them. Please don't take them. Is that they are.
You're not allowed to poach them.
Please do not. Please. But they are amazing people. So, they've already come in, so I have, 4 software engineers right now that have worked in some version of platform engineering somewhere, right? And they've had to do things themselves somewhere else. And they have already, some good soft skills and willingness to talk to engineers. And that right there is already coming over some of the stumbling block, because you have to go out and talk to these other engineers and understand what their problems are. So there'd be a lot of times where in my one-on-ones, I would talk with them and say, okay, I need someone to facilitate this meeting. Can you facilitate this meeting? And if you have issues, like what can we do? Like what is worrying you? Like why being in front of people, does that worry you? And doing a lot of coaching, right? Like, okay, let's try it, see what happens. And then if you don't like it, we'll come back and figure it out again. And we'll get those soft skills to a point of, you don't have to be amazing. You just gotta be able to do it okay. And doing okay is all we need. I would say they do it really well, a lot of them. And that's really good. And that is going to be someone's toughest part. I think you need individuals on platform engineering that are more than just the best, coder, best reliability engineer, SRE. You need those. It's like any composition of a team. You need the right T shapes, and then you want to make that comb shape for the team. But you definitely have to have people, if they don't have the soft skills, they're willing to develop them. And it's almost like developing TPMs out of them, right? Like I need you to become a TPM. And that's really hard, because that, for some people, can be a very scary word. I don't want to be a TPM. I'm like, well, I don't need you to be a TPM, but I need you to have qualities and put a hat on that says, I can take this here, right, and do it. And to like maybe put a final thought in on it is finding someone in your org that probably has some of those skills and is probably good at them is a great idea. I always try to empower my people. And one of my people, who's actually from the Stacks team, came to us, and he is great at taking outcomes, boiling them down to like, what are the opportunities, and then finding the problems. And he can do that through, frequent contacts, frequent talking. And then he mentors people when he does all this, and taking that person and saying, okay, again, shining that light again, right? Showing this person's doing amazing. And that will pull other people to say, that person's doing good stuff. What can I do to be a part of that? Because people like to be part of good change. So
yeah, that's interesting. One of the things with the marketing of it is, I feel like, there's plenty of topics on the internet about like DevOps versus platform engineering, and I'm sure some people that know me or listen to this are like, hey, wait, you did that, dude. Yes, I did. I definitely did. But there's plenty of videos of people asking me about that, so we won't get into it. But like, I feel like when we look at where we are as a community of people that work in the cloud and do DevOps and operations and whatnot, many orgs are still where we were as a collective in 2008 before like DevOps was coined, right? And we haven't gotten there. And you even see this, like it went from this idea, this culture, these two teams working together to like it's a role now in many organizations. And I feel like one of the things that, I don't think there's anything wrong with DevOps. Obviously, I think platform engineering is an extension of it. But I think what we did wrong as far as getting our organizations to adopt it and take it seriously was that we didn't market it. No one did a good, not like companies selling it. The companies selling it did a fine job marketing it. They marketed the shit out of it. But like internally, like us selling it to our businesses, us selling our business counterparts, us selling it to our teammates is something that I think that we did not do a good job at. And I think that's kind of why DevOps isn't what it should have been for many organizations. And that's one of the things that's always kind of excited me about this renewed interest in platform engineering, because it's not new.
Yeah.
Was that there was this like product and marketing like tone on it from the get-go. And I'm very excited by that. Like I know it's, for some people like it's like, marketing part's not exciting. It's like, yeah, but it's catching on quick and people are getting excited about it and people are actually doing the work this time around. And I think that's going to be the big difference. And I would say, if you're on a team and you're struggling to get your organization to like buy in and be excited about it, you're probably missing a little bit of that marketing. You're probably telling them what you will get with platform engineering. You're not telling them why it's important and what problems it's going to solve, and like illustrating that with numbers and case studies from within your company, right? Like that is great stuff that can really get the idea like in everybody's mind and like thinking of it day in, day out. So sorry, random segue. It's just like when we get into marketing, I'm just like, yes, this is such an important part of the work.
I would take that a step further. Like I think, one thing that I could have told you more about is also thinking about like, I had, my CTO buy-in, right? Like some places have a lot of like metrics that tie things together, and you can like easily calculate ROI if I, decrease my build time or make my pipelines better. And you can do that. At Stack Overflow, we didn't have that connection as easily, right? Like, so, luckily, I could talk to a CTO who was very, educated on the idea and gave me space and gave us space, gave the team space to like, be like, okay, you have some space to do this, give it a shot and see how it works. And then, we did all the things we've talked about, but part of that marketing is, interestingly enough, talking to things like the product managers and being like, listen, do you want fast iterations? Oh, you do? Boy, do I have something for you, right? And they're just like, In fact, I had one product manager tell me just recently that like they are just so happy with how fast they can iterate on something that this team's deployed. It's just like you can get iterations out like that, compared to the monolith. And in fact, the team, I think, doesn't really want to go back to the monolith anymore because, they love their, 4 to 5 minute from code build to deployment, compared to the 40-minute build of the monolith, right? And then you're marketing around everyone, and because everyone's part of the same journey. So if I can't explain it to a product manager or my team can't, then we need to work on that because they need to see the value too. Because listen, in the end, we all are here to help the business, and the product, the literal product, like you just said, the literal product we're trying to do, has to benefit from what we're doing. Otherwise, we're playing with ones and zeros for fun, which is great and all, but we want to get further for the business so we can go farther.
We want to maximize shareholder value.
No.
Sorry.
God, don't know.
Make profit. Okay. Maximize shareholder. No.
So for people that weren't watching on YouTube, I had full jazz hands when he was talking about the PMs from other teams. I mean, but it's a really great point, right? Like if you're working on a platform team and you can't explain the benefits and the problems that it solves to somebody that's non-technical, right? Like that is a problem right there. And I'd say like that is pretty keen. Like even just exercising that conversation on a few PMs in your org to get them to get it, because then you will probably start to get this. Well, like, yeah, I was talking to Corey the other day, and he said their build time's like 8 times faster than ours. Like, how much is that slowing you all down and like getting these features out, right? Like, you might create yourself some like free marketing.
Yeah, exactly. And free marketing is the best marketing. No pay, don't have to.
It is the best marketing. It is the best marketing. So as you all kind of like work through, your platform journey, what are some of the like technologies and trends that you are seeing in the cloud, right? Because there's a lot of stuff you may not have had access to, like when you're running on-prem. Like, so you're seeing all these services in the cloud, you're seeing AI and LLMs coming down the pipeline. Like, what technologies and trends are you seeing that are exciting to your team to kind of incorporate into your platform that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's a really hard question too, because I love it all. Like I'm seeing things that are really interesting to in the ownership side of things, where like I was just looking at and playing around with open costs the other day. The idea that I can, deploy to the cloud in Kubernetes clusters and get an idea of costs, from a unified framework and it works everywhere. Like I was just like, phew. Like, because cost is an ownership thing that I think teams should try to own, right? Like, I don't think they should care about the dollar number, but they should care, like, if somebody comes to them and says, hey, you need to reduce by 10%, that's something they can work on. So that was an interesting space that I saw. Is it the most influential? I'm not sure, but one of the things that I would say that we're really interested in, I'm gonna say it personally, is more looking at workflow provisioning of infrastructure. And how that's going to try to become standardized. I was reviewing a really cool new CNCF adoption. I forget. I think they're like just early in, called Score.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, this is awesome. Like I can provision infrastructure and it's understandable and it's updatable and I can see where everything is at any one time. Like that's pretty amazing. And I think that's a good way to give contracts between, like, if you're going to have even in platform engineering, you probably have something like a base team that does some of that stuff. Like, hey, I'm the one, we own provision your infrastructure. Cool. So I want a nice contract to make that easy. Score does that, right? Like, I think that's a good way. And I've seen workflow in the past where you just create your own whatever, right? It could be a JSON file, YAML. It would never. Who writes in YAML anymore? No, YAML's fine, I guess. Yeah, I'm sorry.
might be my favorite language.
Oh, I hope you were going to say XML, but okay. But yeah, you'd have some contract with them, and you would pass it along, and they would provision the stuff for you automatically, which is great. But Score, I think, is a really cool way. So the standardization of that space, I think, is a next level like iteration for where we're going in the cloud, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, I think that one's pretty interesting, because I feel like a few years ago there was like this, like, some orgs, it was like, this team manages infrastructure and you all do your apps. And it's like, and there's a lot of orgs that are still like this today. Like if I need a database or a queue, like I have to go open a ticket, change management, GitHub, Jira, whatever, tap somebody, sneak a Slack message out there and be like, hey, can I get an SQ or, GCP pub sub queue or something. But the funny thing is, like, when we think about our apps, like where the cloud started, our apps ran on the cloud. It was like, I got a classic VPC from AWS and I got an EC2 instance and I put my app on it and it runs. But now, like, our apps are the cloud. Like my app needs cloud services for it to function, right? And like that shift of like, I'm using queues, I'm using step functions, I'm using object stores. Like these things are very specific to my app, not how we run applications. I need that control. Like I can't like that grinds teams to a halt. Like if you're like, all infrastructure provisioning has to go through this infrastructure team, like go tap one of those people if you need a queue, right? And like being able to extend the ability for a developer to get certain cloud services when they need it with your compliance and all your practices in places like that right there is I feel like one of the holy grails in this shift towards self-service and platform engineering is like letting people just grab that stuff, because I feel like we've just gotten in this weird spot where it's like, oh, that's infrastructure, that's not theirs. And it's like, no, I mean, it is. I can brew install that stuff locally. Like if I can brew install it, I should be able to make it myself there. The catch is like, are my guardrails in place, right? Now that's the part that freaks all of us ops folk out. Is like, oh, they didn't copy the OPA policies, right? Like, how do we get all that stuff in place and let them run, because that's what they need, right? Like our apps are getting to be less code as we're starting to buy into some of these commodity services. So like let the developers get it. Otherwise, if they don't, they're going to code around you,
they always
or
do.
they're going to click ops it.
Yeah.
So beware, ops folk.
Yep. Oh yeah. They'll write some Terraform, and you don't want them writing Terraform, do you?
No, you don't, because they're just going to bug you about it.
Right.
Is this right? Yeah. How many zones do I need? I'm going to put all of them.
How do I do a loop again?
The cost stuff's interesting too, though, because I feel like that is a really important thing for, and again, not like necessarily like every dollar, but like a lot of developers are out of the loop, and even some ops folk are out of the loop as to like how a change to a piece of infrastructure affects the cost, right? And for many orgs, like 3 months down the line, the CFO is like, hey, how do we cut this cloud bill? And it's like, oh, well, you just introduced a lot of work for me to go and do that. But like, if you can start to see, you said open cost, right?
Yeah, open cost.
I'll put a little show note in there so we can throw a link in the link in the show notes. But I think that's important, right? Because while you might not care about the dollar amount per se, if you see that there's a big fluctuation in the cost of your services, like that tells you something. We're scaling, or somebody's misconfigured something, right? But like if you know that your company's under a budget, like there's something that probably needs your attention now versus like when it's an emergency in 3 months. And that's a level of I guess enablement and visibility that many developers just don't have.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. One of the things we talk about a lot in enabling platform is ownership. And ownership of lock, stock, and barrel of everything, that to me goes all the way to the costs. And I know in my organization, and in every organization I think I've been part of, I just think it should change, is that, I'm sitting here working on my code, and then someone taps me on the shoulder and says, hey, that Kubernetes instance is costing us $100,000 a year. And you're like, whoops. How was I supposed to know, right? Like I didn't know. And I think if you can expose that like a metric right up front, that has such a power to it, because now it's not just about like, how do I deploy the coolest engineering thing that delivers my product value, but also like, hey, how can I do this like by minning that number, right? Like, come on, we all like gamifying, right? So like, why I got mine, I got my instance down to bucks as opposed to hundreds of dollars, and that and it doesn't matter what org you're in, right? If I'm in a startup, and my bill can only be X thousands of dollars, and maybe even smaller, like costs matter a lot there. And then if you're a big fintech company, costs matter there too, because everything's a budget, right? And it matters. Like it needs to be streamlined and understood. And even for us, we have the same issues, right? We're always looking for, hey, do we really need this integration? Do we really need to have these on as VMs? Can we do Kubernetes here? And honestly, we haven't talked much about it because it's AI and platform. People are going to tell me AI is coming to platform too. But as we deploy more AI resources, anybody does, those costs are just going to go like out of this world. And if your system's like, I'll make like 20 LLM calls just to do this one request, right? To give this person a good recipe. It's like, I mean, you could do that, but you could use Elasticsearch and then just have a good re-ranker on it and cost you like 1/10 the cost, 1/100th the cost. So
yeah, AI and platform is going to be interesting. I actually had a guest on a few weeks back. I'll put a link in the show notes, and they were talking about how they're incorporating AI into one of the internal platforms at Google. And it just becomes, I mean, it's not just the cost there, right? And you're running it in the metal. Like what starts to become interesting is like, who owns that data if the platform engineering team is offering AI services, right? Like, so it starts to get real interesting. It's like, oh, who does own that data? Like, is it still owned by these 20 teams, right? Like if we can start to build a commodity interface for AI in the platform, like is the data of the platform engineering teams now? Because like that's where it starts to get real interesting too. Because like if you're thinking of yourselves as like a separate entity, a separate product, it's like, oh, I own all their data now. But it's a pretty interesting topic.
Yeah, I'll be interested in it. I'm not against it. Just I want to see it first.
I'm bearish. I was bearish on the call. I'm bearish on all things AI, except for the robots coming to get me.
Oh yeah,
because I'm mean to them. Yeah, I'm not bearish about that. I'm pretty confident in that one. Awesome. Well, I know we're coming up to the top of the hour here. I want to be respectful of your time. One last question for you. Is there anything you've learned along the way, from your time as a teacher to your time as an IC or your time as a engineering manager or director, that you want to share or that you think could help people in their career, in their path?
Whew, that is a last question, loaded one.
Yeah.
I the best thing to realize for any person, no matter what they're doing in this field that we're in, is realize that we're all humans. We're all really trying to do amazing stuff, and we all want to work together, and learning how to like enable each other to do awesome stuff, and that we're all not the same. That can be such a powerful enablement tool to get you buy-in, get you education, to get you to have people who come along the way with you, to even convince people that the way you would like to design a system is has a better pro and con matrix than the one they're suggesting. Those soft skills, as we talked about earlier, and recognizing how to use them in the right way it'll be a game changer for everybody, even if you have no plans of being a manager, TPM, PM, CTO. It just helps you interface with the people who also want to help you do an amazing job, So, I would always say that think of the other person on the other side of your call, your desk, and think about how you can interact with them better, and try your best with it. And I think you'll see good results if you always put your best foot forward.
Yeah, I like that. It's so easy for us to sit down at a computer and exercise our skills in development, right? Mm-hmm. Or like find an open source project and contribute to it and exercise our skills in development. But as software engineers, like we're spending like 30 hours a week, like in our terminal, mm-hmm. right? We don't get a lot of opportunity to exercise those soft skills. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, it's been super fun having you today. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate the extra time too. So everybody, we tried to record this earlier this week and my laptop literally melted in the middle of the call. So we had to retape, but I appreciate more time. Thanks for sharing the journey and look into Stack Overflow. Where can people find you online?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I'll add it into the show notes for you. That's probably the best place to get me. I kind of swear off most social media, so that'd be the best place. And I can also give you my Stack Overflow profile as well.
Ooh, yeah. I'm gonna go see how many points you got. You probably have. Oh, no, never mind. He has the most amount of points. You don't even need to go look at it. Just trust us.
Yeah. It's the best.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for the time. And if you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to rate, follow, or subscribe to the Platform Engineering Podcast on your favorite platform. And if you haven't checked it out already, we just finished a 5-part series on the foundations of the cloud. We talked to Mitchell Hashimoto about the founding of Terraform, Brian Grant about creating Kubernetes, and Adrian Cockcroft and his influence on what is AWS. So thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Platform Engineering Podcast. Have a topic you would love to learn more about? Let us know at Corey@massdriver.cloud. That's CORY@MASSDRIVER.cloud. Catch you on the next one.